Hello everyone and welcome to the Planning Game Podcast, your weekly podcast for real world planning solutions to real world planning problems. My name's John McDermott from Town Planning Expert. Let's get right into it. Okay, so for today's episode of the Planning Game, I wanted to focus my attention on business planning in preference to property planning, because in reality, and what we've seen, what we found, what we understand is if a business doesn't have a proper plan, it doesn't have a proper strategy as to how it's going to go about development, then that business is inherently setting itself up to fail. So I wanted to just talk about what we've done, and I wanted to talk about how we've approached things, and I wanted to talk about things like our core strategy, our 5-year plan, which is very much focused on the next 5 years, and how that's informed what we do. I also wanted to touch a little bit about how we organise our businesses, how we've organised our business into what I call a stack, what others would call a funnel. Don't like the term funnel because it implies something, and I don't like the way that works, and we organise it very, very differently, but I wanted to just touch on that as well. So, when we were thinking about considering development, we were very much focused on the idea that we wanted to do it when we were right to do it. Now, what do I mean by that? We weren't going to rush into development straight away. We needed to make sure that the planning business was working really, really well, that the education business was self-funding, so that's the education side of the business was self-funding, and that the development side of the business would be well supported by staff and resource, because the last thing you want is to set something up and then suddenly realise you can't resource it. So we got the planning business to a point where it was functioning very, very well. Self-sufficient, it could run itself pretty much. We had a team behind it that could support all the activity we were doing. And we were very, very good at what we did. Now, actually, getting to that very, very good point is an important lesson that came out of Bali. Because, again, one of the things that we've seen in the 3 Bali retreats that we've done and the Malta boot camp that we've done is that people who want to do development tend to rush into it a little bit. It's seen as a nice big target to hit, and because it's seen as this lovely big target, you end up rushing in where angels fear to tread. What most people do is jump. If people understand or know the computer game Lemmings from the 1990s, that's exactly what they do. They go to a networking event and they see what someone else is doing. I was at our networking event last night, Penn, and Jay Chahorn said it best. You know, they look at other people's show reels on Facebook and they want a bit of that action and they just jump. They quit their job and away they go. So that's all well and good if you can support yourself in doing that. But the problem is most people can't. Most people don't find the means short-term to support themselves, end up having to return to work, feeling very disillusioned. We didn't want to do that when we set up the development arm of our business. We wanted to make sure that life would and could go on without worrying too much about it. So we made sure that the planning business was functioning and was in a very good state. Now, we set standards on what very good state was. We needed to make £200,000 a year in that business, and that's what we did. Then the other part of our strategy was that we had to set up an education arm. We were already doing education activities. We were had our own little workshops before we met the boys at White Box, and we'd run a little planning course before we met the boys at White Box that had gone reasonably well. It's just that we hadn't really pushed it. So we span off our education part of the business into a new company, and we allowed that company to grow. Now, that company's grown over the last 3 years and is now in a fully functioning state to the extent that it pays my salary on its own. That's really quite good. Now, from that, we then started to build relationships. Now, everyone in development who's doing development will tell you that relationship building is mission critical. It's a relationship game. You don't get good deals unless you're building good relationships with agents, with architects, with investors, with people who want to do the deal with you. Now, Daniel Priestley talks about this a lot. We unwittingly did this without Daniel Priestley's guidance, and then we realised what it was. He calls it oversubscription. So what we did is we got our workshops to function on an oversubscription model. We didn't know we were doing that. We took the view that we were just being ethical. We grew our workshops only at a rate where people wanted to do them. And then we set a maximum limit. And that limit is geared on how many workshops I can physically manage to do in a month. I do 3 for White Box and I do 3 for TPX Education. So we had very much a goal, a standard in mind, and we followed it. And we followed it on the principles that Daniel calls of oversubscription. We basically called supply and demand. We only supplied a new workshop when there were enough people to fill that workshop right from the outset. We didn't do a new workshop until there was enough people to actually fill it, because there's no point in doing one with a half full room. That gives the wrong message, and the people attending the workshop don't get as much out of it. There are less brains in the room to help them along. So that gave us the ability to start building relationships. We were building relationships with investors. We were building relationships with the people who were attending our workshop. We were building relationships with the people on Mastermind at White Box, etc., etc., etc. We also took an opportunity. Now, the opportunity is not one that you might think. The opportunity is we are a learning organisation. We've always set ourselves out as a learning organisation, and we learned. Now, it kind of is a bit weird, me saying that a mentor is always learning. In theory, a mentor knows everything, don't they? Not in my view. Part of the reason why I went and did mentoring with White Box was because, unlike others, they learn. They're a learning organisation. They learn from what they're doing. They change, they adapt, they grow. And that's very much what I'm about. So the learning component was very much looking at what everyone else is doing, assessing what is going on, and making judgments on that key learning. Now, I've always taken this view. If you see me make a mistake on Facebook, or if you see me, get corrected on Facebook, my instant reaction to it is, thank you for that. I'm really pleased I've been corrected. I'll learn from that and I'll adapt. Because at the end of the day, I'm not right 100% of the time. I know I'm not right 100% of my time. Our statistics say that I'm not right 100% of my time. But that's fine. If I was right all of the time, I would not learn. I would just carry on doing the same thing over and over and over again. Edison very famously said, I didn't fail, I just figured out 3,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. That's not the exact quote. I know that, but it's a pretty good analogy for what I'm trying to say, which is, if you don't learn from your mistakes, if you just try and do the same thing over and over and over again and don't adapt and don't grow as a professional, you'll never adapt and grow as a practitioner, or adapt and grow as a mentor, or in my case, as a developer. So I looked at what everyone else was doing. I looked at the whole market, everyone we were interacting with. I wanted to do something that no one was doing in that marketplace. Everyone was doing Office to Resi at that time. Office to Resi doesn't excite me. I do them day in, day out at work. They're bread and butter stuff for us. They're very, very easy to access, but the market is highly competitive. The retail to Resi equally. We heard about that last night at Penn, and I agree. It's a very vibrant market, but it's a bit too vanilla. And I wanted to do something different. And then I had an opportunity. The opportunity I grabbed with both hands, and that opportunity was Emma Morby. Emma Morby had the same passion as I do. I'm very passionate about bringing listed buildings back into life. Special buildings that everyone overlooks because everyone says that's too difficult. And I had a passion for looking at these and understanding, well, okay, how can we make this work? My interest was piqued when Emma put in front of me a building. This building was Raglan Gate in Plymouth. Now, this building had all the markers of a building that desperately needed some attention. But it had all the markers of a development that would build real legacy. It would guarantee the life of the building for another 100 years. All my boxes ticked. And with a investor partner, or in this case, a property development partner, who would take that opportunity and run with it. I didn't have to invest all of my time in it. I just had to provide the planning expertise, something that apparently I'm quite good at. So we then had to go and find someone who was mad enough to do it with us. And then another opportunity came along. On the first Bali trip, I met Trevor Walker. Trevor is an amazing guy, very understated. When I first met him, he just sauntered into the retreat wearing a Homer Simpson t-shirt and fake shorts. And he admitted that they were fakes. Very unassuming, but when we listened to and heard what he had to say about himself, it was actually really quite profound. The upshot with Trevor is that Trevor loves old buildings. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't like the vanilla of just repeating same old, same old. He likes older buildings. So, with Trevor, we put together a plan for Raglan Gate. Trevor would buy the building and would loan the SPV the necessary startup capital, and me and Emma would work it up, get it through planning, and then we build it out, and there'll be a profit share. Very simple, very straightforward, with everyone in the game, completely transparent. Now, one thing led to another, and as with all things, Andy Cook says activity creates opportunity. Mate, if you're listening to this, I'm 100% behind you. Because that activity led to an opportunity. Emma brought us the Defensible Barracks and put it in front of me and Trevor and said, well, the same guy who pointed me at this one has pointed me at this one as well. What do you think? We looked at it. It was on for an obscenely low amount of money, and we put an obscenely low offer in on it. And our offer was accepted. The bank wanted to get rid. Now it has its problems. All listed buildings do. You have to look past the ivy and look past the bits that are falling down, and you have to look at the beauty of the building and understand what you can actually do with it. The opportunity that presents itself. You can't be too brave with a listed building. You have to work with what you've got. But as long as you understand that, and as long as you don't try and push the boundaries, then actually you can get really well-worked development out of it. The upshot from that was we then had 2 development projects with Trevor. He went and bought himself a fort in Wales. Amazing. Activity creates opportunity. Now that gave us a track record that we could put in an offer pack. A really, really impressive track record that we could put in an offer pack. They weren't developed yet, and we never claimed they were. We very, very simply said we are working this one up and we are working this one up. And then the third opportunity came along. Now, the third opportunity was found by one of my planning consultants, Helen Morris-Ruffle, and her husband down in Plymouth. It was one where, again, it met all the markers. Helen knew what I was looking for by this point. I was looking for a listed building that I wanted to convert. And the offer was accepted. We put in an offer. It wasn't the highest offer. It wasn't the lowest offer. It was somewhere in the middle. But because we were able to demonstrate how we were going to do it and in what time frame, and because we promised to stick to that time frame, and the time frame, of course, was realistic because, let's face it, we know how long planning applications take, we were able to present that to the vendors in such a way that they were impressed enough as a charity to sell us, or agreed to sell us the building, and they signed a lockout on it. We're now working that one up, Development 3. Now that gave me the opportunity to go back to the masterminders, go out to them and say, okay, you've seen what I'm doing with Trevor on these 2, but I've got another one that needs funding. Who wants to play? And that then enabled me to select, to use that term, a partner who wanted to play the game. We were able to do that at our leisure. Activity created the opportunity, in this case the selection process. But it all came about as part of building a business or a sequence of businesses in such a way that we were elevated at each stage to a point of authority. And as soon as you're at that point of authority, things change. People want to work with you. A lot of people approach our company now and get very disappointed that they cannot work with me. They have to work with the team. And that comes as a shock to them. For us, it's not a shock at all. We select our clients. We make sure that the people we work with are people we can support, which is why we're never afraid to say no to a job. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. If you're a client of ours, it means that you've been through the pre-selection process and you're on our books because, and only because, we think we can work with you. The part of our business strategy that we're most proud of is our core strategy. Now, we're planners at the end of the day, so we write everything according to policy, and that's exactly what we did. And you'll find our core strategy on our website. We actually put it front and centre. There's a link to it on the homepage, and it's a really lovely, I like it, 16 or so page document that goes through what we're going to do in the next 5 years. It has policies in it. We're planners. Planners understand policy, so let's write some policies. It had policies in it, and those policies set out what we are going to do and by when. Everything we do now is tested against those policies. If it doesn't meet the policy criteria, we ain't going to do it. To use Andy's quote, and I am quoting a lot from him today, but on the day of recording, it's his birthday, so lovely. To quote Andy directly, if it doesn't make our boat go faster, we're not doing it. If we haven't got a policy for it, if it doesn't comply with one of our policies, we are not going to do it. So that is a quite important document for us. Now, in order to get buy-in from everyone, in order to actually make sure it stuck, what we did was get everyone to write it. No one was left out. All of our associates were included within it. Everyone. And the important thing was behind that was we wanted everyone to feel a part of this journey. We wanted everyone to feel a part of the game. It's horrible, I know, as an employee, being dictated to from above. So why do it? Why not instead have everyone bought into it from the get-go? It's their core strategy. It's what they want us to do. How much more powerful is that? And that's exactly what we've got. We've got buy-in right from the outset. One of the things that the team all turned around and said is, John, you need to stop doing so many planning applications and start being a chief exec and get on with business development. And that's exactly what I've done. I even got evicted from downstairs in the planning room and got shoved upstairs because, let's face it, they got bored of me waffling. But, end of the day, that's about forward planning. Now, the final thing I wanted to talk about in terms of forward planning is how you stack businesses together, because amongst other things, I'm in my, 7th business now, in terms of SPVs and JVs, and 4 businesses in the TPX group. Or is it 5? 5. It's probably more than 7. But they all fit within inside a stack. Now, what do I mean by a stack? If you imagine a silo, a big grain silo, and if you were to pour into that silo the different layers of all your businesses that you have, how do they interrelate with each other? How can one feed each other? They're not in silos, they're not in isolation, they are working together cooperatively. Now, this is something we go through in Goa on our bootcamp with our mentees, in that we want them to realise how their different businesses can work together, or if they're setting up a business for the first time, how different components of that business can function to work cooperatively. Our education, development, planning, affiliate programs, boot camps, they all work together. They all work cooperatively within a group. Not one competes with another. And they're designed in such a way, and they're stacked up and ordered in such a way that one naturally feeds the other. Something from our education feed, essentially, our education activities may well turn into a planning application that our planning our planning part of the group deals with. Education JV opportunity might well be something that our development arm deals with. Someone from our planning arm might very well decide they want to go on a boot camp. They all interrelate with each other, and they're mutually beneficial. Most people see development in silos. I don't. I see development businesses working cooperatively, and I've organised our businesses with our team so that they all operate cooperatively in a command and control structure. That means they're managed cooperatively. When you go to our website, you see Town Planning Expert Group. You don't see Town Planning Expert Education, or Town Planning Expert Development, or Town Planning Expert Boot Camps, unless the branding specifically changes to that. You see TPX Group. Now, that gives us the opportunity to organise everything we do around our clients. Our services are client-centric. Now, that's really, really cool from a business perspective, but it's also really cool from a development perspective, because suddenly the client is the most important thing. So what happens when the client is you? What happens when it's your development? You're the business owner and it's your development. Well, suddenly the business then orbits around you. Orbits is a really good way of describing it. Some others will call it an ecosystem. But I like the idea of things orbiting around the client. The client is the centre of gravity. That's a brief sort of interlude, I think, into how we've organised our businesses. It's not a do as I say, do as I do kind of approach. It's a this is how we've done it and the reasons why. I'd love to know your feedback on this. Every once in a while when I do one, I tend to get good listening figures, and that's absolutely fantastic, but I'd love to know your feedback on it, and I'd love to know what you would like us to cover in the planning game in 2020. I'm going to try and record another couple of these before the end of the year, so stay tuned. And don't forget, you can catch us at Property Expert Network every month. You can catch us at the White Box Mastermind every month. You can catch us at Property Developer Secrets and the Land and Planning Workshop roughly every 2 months. All right, guys, you have a really great day, and I look forward to speaking to you again on The Planning Game.